You'll still see them along country roads. One-room schoolhouses, once the pride of the township and usually the first building completed. Nostalgia has transformed the one-room country school into the little red schoolhouse, an integral part of an idealized American past. Back in 1921, the Post reported there were still 200,000 one-room country schools, and they were the foundation of America's educational system, instructing at least half of America's students. They hadn't changed much over the generations. There was a little need. The students who would grow up to be farmers or homemakers just had to know the basics. A few years in a one-teacher school would be enough for them to learn arithmetic, reading, and writing. And it was thought to be valuable for children to memorize and recite famous speeches and poetry. Much of this material was taken from the 6 McGuffey Readers, first published in 1830. The school day began early for farm children who had to walk miles cross-country to reach school by 8 o'clock. They'd bring their lunches with them, often packed in old tobacco tins or lard buckets. They were greeted by teachers who were mostly women, often young, idealistic, and willing to work for a modest salary from the county. But sometimes unemployed veterans took the job. Students were divided into grades based on their ability. Each grade received appropriate instruction. If it was a large class with several grades, the teacher might only be able to instruct for 10 minutes before moving on to another subject in another grade. It was an exhausting schedule. A student's education was often interrupted by the demands of the farm. And sometimes the needs were so great that children couldn't return to school until the next year, which is how older students found themselves learning alongside much younger children. For generations, this was how most Americans were educated. But in 1921, the Post reported that the country schools were in trouble. All of America's single-teacher country schools were run on just 9% of the federal education budget. Without proper funding, these schools became dreary, desolate, and unsanitary. The Post called them unfit shelters for humans. The one-room schools began closing, and classes were consolidated into new, larger facilities, with each grade having its own teacher and its own modern, clean classroom, with desks that didn't have to be shared. Consolidation had been made possible by the introduction of the school bus. Now, instead of spending hours walking to class, students were riding across the county to a central school. At first, the transportation was horse-drawn, but in time, these were replaced by motor buses. The old schools were mostly abandoned and became so rare that in 1946, Norman Rockwell painted one as an example of vanishing Americana. A recent article on Forbes.com argued that one-room schools still had a valuable advantage to offer. They might have had one teacher, but the school expected students to help other students. Several studies have shown that children learn better when they have to teach the material to others. Mixed-age classrooms lend themselves to cross-generational and peer tutoring, students helping students, and building a community of learners. In a society divided by pandemics, disruptive technologies, and polarized politics, we might benefit from reviving the sense of community. Saturday Evening Post members can explore our 200-year-old archive for only $15 a year. Subscribe today.